Welcome and welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell and today I have a giant book haul, my last book haul of the year. So I was very lucky to be gifted a lot of books, and I also did some shopping of my own recently. My husband gave me a bit of a shopping spree, and yeah, I also went to Barnes & Noble to do some shopping there too for their big sale that they had. I still have some more shopping to do there because then I got myself a bunch of rewards points or rewards bucks or whatever with their sale. So, but this is definitely the last haul of the year. So I just want to go ahead and start out with my gifted books. So these are the books that have all been gifted to me by friends and family. And so the first ones are the first two books in the Ice Planet Barbarians series. This is by Ruby Dixon. These were super kindly gifted to me by Jess from Honest Fiction. I am really excited to have these. I've really gotten into this series this year. I've read the first, I don't know if it's 6 or 7 books, but I've read a whole bunch of them. This series is about a group of women who are taken from Earth and they are not treated well. There's a lot of trigger warnings in here, so make sure you check those out. But they are like crash landed on this planet and it's super icy, and they meet the inhabitants of this planet and they're these big blue aliens. They're like fated meat type of romances, and I really love this whole series. It's been a lot of fun and I'm looking forward to continuing on and reading more from Ruby Dixon as well. This next book was kindly gifted to me by Daphne from Being Daphne. This is How High We Go in the Dark, another sci-fi, but this is not a sci-fi romance, this is just a sci-fi. And this is like a climate / futuristic sci-fi. This is a group of short stories set in the future, near future, and then it becomes farther and farther future, like way in the future. This is a group of short stories, kind of interconnected, like Love Actually, if you watch that, but imagine it in like a almost apocalyptic, futuristic sci-fi. So this starts out with these group of archaeologists who are studying the melting permafrost, and there is a disease in here, so trigger warnings for a pandemic because that's basically what this whole thing is about. But it's very sad, it's very heartbreaking, it's very emotional. Yeah, it's very emotional, but it's one of my favorite reads of the year. I'm so excited to have a copy. I want to reread this and annotate it. I loved it, and I don't even annotate, so I will reread this again one day. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Daphne. Next, I was ridiculously spoiled by Maggie. She sent me some of the softest socks I've ever had in my life. And they're also super breathable. Sometimes socks, like I feel like they get so hot, and I feel like to have socks that are so breathable at the same time, because they're not usually that breathable. They're like super somehow thin but warm and super soft too at the same time. I don't know how to describe them. These are the best socks. But anyway, she also got me 3 books. She got me A Hole in the Soulless, which I'm so excited for. I read the prequel novella in this series called Sven the Collector. This is like a Norse-inspired dragon rider fantasy romance series, but each book is a standalone romance. Each book follows a different couple. And I gave the first book, it was like just a novella, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I loved it. It's not a spicy series. It's kind of like way low on the spice scale. And it's just, I loved that first novella. I can't wait to read this book. I'm so excited. If you like barbarians and dragons, well, they're like wyverns in this series, or like Norse-inspired fantasy romance, I definitely recommend. Okay, Maggie also got me Blood Crown by Elizabeth Brown and Tori Heat. I have never heard of this, and it looks really good. Maybe I have. I don't know. I think this is supposed to be really spicy, she said. And it says, in a world where men rule and slavery is common practice, being the only queen and abolishing slavery puts a large target on your back. Ooh, okay, sounds good. So, it's supposed to be super spicy. I've got a Noah joining me here. It's supposed to be spicy, and so I'm definitely going to read it when I'm in the mood for that. Finally, Maggie also got me Ledge, which is a fantasy romance that's supposed to be like wintry and icy, so maybe it'll be perfect for Once Upon a Readathon, because it is like Iceland themed, all about like icy icy and snowy books. So the back says the cold is not alive. I've heard a lot of mixed things, but a lot of good things about the series. I think it's going to give me a lot of points. Like, there's ice on the cover and everything too. And so I think it could give me a lot of points for the readathon. I guess this takes place on at a place called the Ledge, and there's this civilization that's trapped by a vast chasm and a sheer mountain face. And so it's kind of like a bit survivalist fantasy romance. This could be really good. So thank you so much, Maggie, for all of those books. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay, so they are snacking. We'll see how long the quiet lasts. Next, I got a gift from my dear friend Kristen from Kristen Craves Books. This is just on air. I think we've talked about buddy reading this. This is supposed to be a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy romance that came out this year. It was on the Goodreads Romantasy Awards list. And I did have an arc for this book, but I didn't read it because I don't read my arcs. And so I've stopped requesting them. But a long time ago, like a while back, I did get the arc for this. Anyway, so I do still really want to read it, and I've heard really good things. And I know Olivia from Olivia Reads Latte read this and really enjoyed it. She said it really wasn't like high on the romance. It was like more like an epic fantasy with a romance. And so I think I'm going to really like this one. I really have high hopes. So Kristen, we need to buddy read this. And thank you so much for sending me a copy. Next from my dad, I got Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher, and this is in the same world as Sword Heart, which is one of my favorite books of this year. It's supposed to be a quirky fantasy with some romance too, and I really like T. Kingfisher's fantasy books that have a little bit of romance in them, and this is supposed to be about a paladin. And then I got Child of the Prophecy by Juliette Marillier, which is the third book in the Seven Waters trilogy, the first Seven Waters trilogy. So I read Daughter of the Forest. I haven't read. Okay, so my dog was freaking out, so he had to go outside. Okay, so this is the third book, but so I have the second book. I haven't read that yet. I've only read the first book. I gave it 5 stars. It was one of my top favorite books of last year. So I love Juliette Marillier. I've loved every book I've read by her, and I just can't wait to read more from her. He also sent me, but I don't think he knows. I think this is supposed to be quite spicy of a book, but it's Nightshade by Carrie Lake. And this is supposed to be like a gothic fantasy romance. And she has a bunch of books that I was very interested in, that are all kind of like gothic romances. But this one is definitely like fantasy romance from what I saw. It's like paranormal. And I definitely much prefer fantasy and paranormal romances to non. So I'm hoping this gives me some Gothicana type vibes. The cover and the back of the cover, too, you can't really see it because of the glare, have major gothic vibes. But yeah, this is supposed to be a paranormal gothic kind of fantasy romance. It's quite long. All of her books are quite long and kind of intimidating, but I'm really excited for this. I'm definitely thinking it's going to be perfect for like fall time, so maybe I'll read it in summer when I'm trying to get into the fall vibes, because I'm always a season ahead. Okay, so let's talk about some books I've got myself. These were 2 continuations for some fantasy romance series. This is Gold by Raven Kennedy. I have started this one. I'm reading it right now. I will say, definitely disappointed. I just don't like the direction this is going. I think it's so ridiculously cliche and expected, and the way it's even being done is just kind of so obvious and boring at the same time. So I'm definitely disappointed so far, but I'm also only like 80 pages in. Getting myself to read even a chapter of this at a time is so difficult. And that could just be my mood right now. I don't know. I'm going to continue. Hopefully it gets better. And then I've got To Flame, A Wildflower by Sarah A. Parker. This is the third book in this series. The first one is To Bleed a Crystal Bloom. Probably my favorite fantasy romance of the year is this series. I'm 100% obsessed. Like, fully obsessed. I'm not in the biggest fantasy romance mood. I don't think, possibly because of the way I'm feeling about this. Like, I'm not going to risk picking this up until I'm definitely in a fantasy romance mood. And sorry I'm not going, like, super in-depth with these. I have so many books to haul that I don't think I can. But there's all the information on Goodreads for this. Okay, so I also got myself book 4, the final book in the Dandelion Dynasty. I have read the first 2. I'm wanting to read book 3 next month. Right now I'm working on Fool's Errand, which is quite a long fantasy romance, which is quite a long epic fantasy book. And I don't like to read multiple at the same time, so yeah. I'm reading that one right now. When I'm done with that one, I'll probably pick this one up. Hopefully I'll be able to read this one in January. And then I also got the Oleander Sword. This is the second book in the, what is the series called? The first book was Jasmine Throne. I don't know what the series is called, but this is the second book, and the third book comes out this summer. So I want to make sure I'm caught up. And I really liked the first book. I gave it 4 stars. This is an epic fantasy series. It's Indian inspired. The magic system is probably one of the coolest magic systems I've ever seen. It is so freaking cool. If you like plant magic, check this one out. And it's also sapphic. So there's that too. Okay, so let's talk about some sci-fi books because I'm in a major sci-fi mood recently. Like, it's literally all I want to read is sci-fi. So I recently got myself book 3 and 4 in the Expanse series. So book 3 is Abidon Gate. I just finished that last night. I read most of this in one day. And then I have Cibola Burn. So I started this series this month and I've already read 3 of these books. And they're all over 500 pages. So that should tell you something. I'm obsessed. This is an epic space opera series that I thought I would like. Did not know it would take over my world. Highly recommend if you are interested in getting into sci-fi and reading one, if you like fantasy and you want something that's like high adventure, will suck you in. Like, I really think that's this. I really, really am loving this series. Highly, highly recommend if you are interested in reading sci-fi. I will say, if you start this series, it starts out kind of like a mystery series, like very like a detective mystery, but stick with it because it doesn't like stay that way. It's just kind of like how it gets the story started. Next, I have The Ferryman by Justin Cronin. This came out this year, and it is a sci-fi horror about these people that live on this, like, utopian island kind of situation. Is it utopian or dystopian? The outside world is deteriorating, and they are all living together on this island, and there's this ferryman who takes the people who retire themselves to this island known as the nursery. That alone sounds so creepy. And I think it's about the ferryman. I don't know. I don't want to know too much going in other than it sounds like it's utopian, dystopian, sci-fi horror. I think things in this book are just, like, not as they seem. And that's why I don't want to read too much of the synopsis and know too much, because I just want to be super, super surprised. Okay, I have another sci-fi horror here that I might read next month for Once Upon a Wraithon because it is, like, wintry, and that is Ascension by Nicholas Binge. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Nicholas Binge. So I think in this one, like, this icy mountain kind of just pops up out of nowhere. It's just appeared in the Pacific Ocean and no one knows why it's there, where it came from. So they send people to investigate, and as people are ascending this mountain, they kind of ascend into madness at the same time. Things get a little bit weird. I'm wondering if this is going to go kind of like in the cosmic horror direction. I'm very curious. But anything sci-fi horror really is a big buzzword for me recently. Okay, so this series is sci-fi horror, but more in a post-apocalyptic sense, and it's also a romance. And this is Darcy Coats. This is the last 3 books in this series. I think I actually hauled the first one since I last talked to you, or so since I last did a book haul. The first one's called Voices in the Snow, but it's a 4-book post-apocalyptic romance horror series, but sci-fi. I can't say too much about the series because I feel like it'll give it away. But I will be reading at least one more book in the series in January probably because it is a snowy setting. It's snowy, icy, cold, and survival. And I think it's going to be perfect to read for the readathon. Another snowy post-apocalyptic book that I'm interested in reading is Moon of the Crusted Snow. What a pretty cover. This is by I don't want to say this name wrong. I apologize. Wabeshid Rice. This is the author's name. And this is supposed to be a Native American story. And it says, with winter looming, a small northern Anishinaabe community goes dark, cut off from power and communication with no foreseeable resolution. So I think it's kind of like a question of like, what's really happening? Is this the end of the world? They're kind of cut off from everything. It's a harsh winter. They're in a very cold area and it's very remote. I think it might be like is it northern Alaska? I'm not sure. Or maybe it's Canada, northern Canada. But their food supply is dwindling, people are dying, panic is panicking. So this could be a really good one too. Let's take a quick break for like horror thriller because those last 2 kind of had the horror thing going for them. I've got the Reformatory by Tananarive Due. I've not read anything by her yet, but she's been on my list of horror authors to try for a long time. And this cover I found to be absolutely stunning. So I got this during the hardback sale at Barnes & Noble. I also know that Books and Lala read this recently and she really, really enjoyed it. The concept is really interesting to me. And I think it's about basically like Jim Crow South. So it's set in the South and it's like horror about racism. And there is this reformatory where they're sending young African-American boys. And it's about possibly like ghosts there. I guess our main character can see ghosts and he's trying to survive there because people there don't last long. And yeah, it sounds like it's going to be very hard hitting. And I know that she's supposed to be a very beautiful writer. So I'm very, very excited for this one. I definitely would be in the right headspace when I read it because I think it might be fairly heartbreaking at the same time. And then I have Riley Sager's The Only One Left. This one, I'm sure I'm like one of the last people to read it. I've only read 3 of his books so far, and I've always given his books pretty good ratings. And I'm interested in this one. I really like the cover. It's supposed to be like a gothic thriller. I did really like his the last book that was like a gothic, like haunted house book. I can't remember the name of it. And then I really love The House Across the Lake, but I know a lot of people did not like that one. So I'm interested to see how I feel about this one. The cover's really cool. I love anything that's set on like a seaside cliff. That just gives cool vibes. And I think this will have some gothic vibes too. Definitely a buzzword for me. Okay, let's talk about more sci-fi because I have a lot more sci-fi to talk about. And then I have some romance too. So stick around if you want to see a few of the romances that I got. So I have Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shards of Earth. So I read Children of Time a while back and it had giant spiders in there. Now, I know some people say that that's like a spoiler, but you find that out literally in the first like 20 pages, so I just don't see how that would be a spoiler. Anyway, I don't like giant spiders. I just don't. I just don't see myself continuing with the series, even though I did give it 4 stars because it was a very interesting book to read at the same time. So I have high hopes for Adrian Tchaikovsky in general. His writing is interesting. His concepts are interesting. And so I'm going to go with this space opera-esque series instead, Shards of Earth. And I think it has a kind of a similar concept in that humans are trying to find more places to live, basically, in space. And I think it's supposed to be a space opera. It looks like Earth already has like these mysterious alien enemies known as the Architects, but then they disappear. And I guess when this book starts, like there's signs that they may be coming back. That's all I need to know. I love mysterious aliens and space war and that kind of thing. Like I'm very excited. The cover is stunning. And I've heard really good things about the series too. Okay, next I have another space opera. And that is the 3-Body Problem. This one's going to be a Netflix series. And I really want to read at least the first book before I try to watch that. I don't know when it's coming out. But this is also this was blurbed by Barack Obama and George R.R. Martin. That tells me something. I think I don't know how many books are in this series. I saw multiple at Barnes & Noble, so. And this was translated by Ken Liu, who wrote the Dandelion Dynasty. And I have major love for him and his writing so far. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be really good. And also the first book is not too long. It's less than 450 pages. Yes, please. Yes. Thank you. Some of these could be so long. Another shorter-ish sci-fi is Becky Chambers' A Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. This is supposed to be like a cozy sci-fi. I just read A Psalm for the Wild Built. One of my favorite books of the year. And that was by her. And that was so good. It was a novella about this tea monk and this robot having this beautiful conversation. And I absolutely adored it. And I want to try more Becky Chambers. And this is the first book in a 4-book series. And I think like each story is connected. But it's not like one of those series where everything goes in the order with like the same characters. Like each book has different characters. Does that make sense? Like they're just kind of interconnected stories. And I'm excited for them. I think this is going to be queer too. Most of her books are queer, which is wonderful. And that's all I know. I don't know anything else about this. I don't really know anything other than it's cozy. But this is like set in space, sci-fi, like space mission kind of thing. And it's about the crew of the Wayfarer. Yeah, I just don't know. I think it's mostly like character driven and about these character relationships on this crew of this ship. Okay, I got next The Splinter in the Sky by Kemi Ashingiwa, which looks really good. This is supposed to be a space opera, and I think this is possibly African inspired. So this book is about Anita, and she wants to get herself shipped to Valbara, where she will be living among people who she thinks are responsible for the kidnapping of Zhang in Ajana. Okay, it says it's perfect for fans of Enki Jemisin and Nnedi Okorafor. And it's a diverse, exciting space opera debut about a young tea expert who's taken as a political prisoner and recruited to spy on government officials. Sounds very intriguing. Next, I have another cozy sci-fi. Now, this cover got a little bit scratched up. It was a little bit scratched up when I got it. But guess what? It was 33% off, and even more than that, it was signed. So I got a signed copy of In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I think this is only my second signed copy I've ever had. Yeah. Pretty freaking awesome. But yeah, this is supposed to be a cozy sci-fi, and I want more cozy sci-fi in my life. I think this might be a Pinocchio retelling in some way, and that's all I know. I kind of want to go into it blind. And then I have another possible space opera series called Infinity Gate. It says the war for the multiverse has begun. I don't know anything about this. It looks like it's political and there's alliances. So things have already expanded so much that there is like this republic or something. It's called the Pandemonium. It's a political and trading alliance of a million worlds. Except that they're really just one world, Earth, in many different realities. Oh my goodness. And when AI threats arise that could destroy everything, pandemonium has built, they'll eradicate it by whatever means necessary. Okay, so this is like alternate realities, like a multiverse kind of situation with AI being explored. This could be very interesting. And then I have The Surviving Sky, probably one of the most beautiful covers that came out this year. This was one of my most anticipated releases. I didn't get to it, but I did just haul it, which is awesome. And this is supposed to be, I think this is supposed to be queer. And this says, it's high above a jungle planet floats the last refugees of humanity. And it's a plant-made civilization held together by tradition, technology, and arcane science. Here, architects are revered deeply, with humanity's survival reliant on a privileged few. If not for their abilities, the cities would plunge into devastating earth rage storms below. So they can't be on Earth. They're like hanging up high in the sky. Looks like there's gonna be a lot of like really fun, not plant magic, but like, I don't know what they call that, like bio sci-fi, I don't know. This also explores this like marriage that is not like going well. So yeah, I'm really excited. I think this is supposed to be a series too. I don't know if it's gonna be a trilogy or what, but Shannon Chakraborty actually blurbed it, and I'm a big fan of her David Bad trilogy, so that's a really good sign for me. Finally, my last sci-fi here is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I really want to get into her books, but I think that they are a little bit interconnected, so I wanted to start with this one. And I do believe this is like a post-apocalyptic type of thing. So I think a lot of her books are post-apocalyptic. And I've been really into post-apocalyptic books recently, so I think that this one should be right up my alley. I have my last 4 books here, and they're romance. One, I don't know if it's really romance. I don't know. Okay, but let's go ahead and start with Sea Cliff by Felicia Andrews. I got this for the cover, and because it is a romantic, like a historical romance, but like a historical romance gothic suspense, which I've also really liked. And the cover was absolutely stunning. And it's set in Wales, and that's all I know. Sounds very gothic. It talks about misty bluffs of Wales and an English nobleman and a gallant Welsh lord. I don't know. It's set on the sea cliffs, and it's freaking gorgeous, and I had to have it. So if anything, just for its cover, but I will probably read it one day. This is the one I don't know if it's not really romance, but it's like a YA fantasy romance. I think in England and I think in the UK it's been republished as a middle grade, but like an older middle grade. But here it's a YA. It's called East. I think there it's called The North Child. But this is a retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which will be perfect for me to read in January, so I might get to it then. But yeah, it's a retelling about this girl who gets sent to, like, she basically sacrifices herself to this bear, and I guess this is their story. And finally, I got the first 2 books in the Outlander series. So I got Outlander and Dragonfly and Amber. So Jen from the Book Refuge is doing a whole like read along for this series, and I really want to partake. I tried the show, but it's a bit intense, and so I'm going to try the books instead and see how I feel. I think I'm going to like them. I like Scottish romances, and I did really like the show, but I only watched, I think, like the first season and a half. I'm really bad at keeping up with shows. I'm much better with books, I think. But yeah, this is, I'm very interested. I'm intrigued. I'm nervous. These are long. Very long. Yeah, over 600 pages, which is a lot for a romance. So we'll see what happens, but it's also time travel, so it's a bit fantasy romance-esque too. Set in Scotland. Yeah, I like Scottish Highlander romances. I'm very intrigued, but I think it's going to be like a chill read along. It starts in January, so I'm supposed to be reading this in January, and it's definitely on my January TBR. I don't think I'm doing a TBR this month, like, on my channel. I think I'll start doing those again in February, just because I don't have the time, honestly, to fit in my schedule. So that's that. I hope you guys like this book haul. If you guys have any ideas of which books you think I need to really prioritize, let me know down below. If you've read any of these books and have thoughts on them, please also comment those down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. All my social media links are down below in the description, including the link to my Patreon if you're interested in that. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life.
Stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.